Hi, my name's Krista, and I'm here to talk about some of the pros and cons of the green movement. Now, I'm not a scientist. If I were, I would talk about some of the research behind it and the controversy there. But as a sociologist, I figure it's better to stick with what I know, and for me, that's the interaction of individuals and of the greater international community sparked by these controversial findings. From what I can tell, only a minuscule minority, even of the scientific community, doubts the existence of global climate change. The real roots of the controversy seem to be much more in how we can or should deal with this, and if we even have the right to make such drastic changes to people's lifestyles. Some of these changes, argued as being for the greater good of our environment, for future resources, and for prosperity, they could infringe on our freedom of choice. Now, for the utilitarian hippie in me, the initial pull seems quite clear, and the argument's really easy to make, as I can see for both pragmatic and for aesthetic moral reasons why such changes need to take place. But again, as a sociologist, I accept that there's so much interconnectedness not only in the concepts and subjects that are embedded in this discussion, but in the global situation as a whole. Global prosperity isn't one thing over another. In my opinion, when you're talking about one topic, whether it's humanitarian relief, pollution, deforestation, climate change, or waste disposal, you're talking about all of them. They're all connected, and the only real way to ensure a better future is by creating sustainable changes for all of them. Now, this isn't how a lot of the discussion is approached. For example, it's one thing to have a nation look at its own research and decide that based on that, to limit its own apparent contribution to global climate change. I realize that even this has its own controversy as it weighs on the rights and freedoms of its people. But still, if you accept that and say that this is what each nation will do, it's a completely different thing to inflict that standard, that ideal, whether it's of the West or any place else, on other countries. This subjugation is most evident in developing countries where they don't have the financial means to produce on an environmentally sustainable way, in part due to the exploitation of richer countries like the US and other ones that are intent on promoting this green change. Take, for example, the shipbreaking yards in Bangladesh, where the US, thousands of times a year, continues to dump its old retired ships that it can't afford to have recommissioned. This produces raw steel, which is the greatest asset to the Bangladesh as an export good. But because of trade restrictions with countries like the US and weak economic factors such as unemployment, lack of raw materials, or access to education, countries like Bangladesh don't have a lot of choices, let alone ones that could stand to make sustainability a priority. Now, despite all of this negative aspect, there is an undeniably compelling feeling that something has to be done. Yet this green movement provides no specific answers about how this should take place. Individuals donning Save the Trees t-shirts might be shocked to find that trees actually contribute more than help global warming. This doesn't mean our solution should be to deforest ASAP. Of course not. In my opinion, there is no one rapid event that caused global warming, therefore why would there be one solution rather than a succession of things, which is the way it was caused in the first place? In any case, it's a good thing to keep in mind that there are no quick fixes, no shortcuts, only long-lasting, mutually beneficial, sustainable answers based on scientific research that will help get us out of this. That's what's so annoying and what's considered so dangerous about the green movement. People aren't really educating themselves about what's going on. They simply listen to the hype and start buying different things. But in terms of our contribution to global climate change, or even something as small as waste disposal, the change needs to be a change of heart as well as a change of purpose. Fred Meyer sells a line of greenware, including green thermoses made of 15 to 20% recyclable material, but states right on the tag that if you buy one, you can get a new one when you're done with the old. Now, while I'm all for reusing and recycling, I think our throwaway habits, met with our blind consumerism, pose a much greater concern than whether or not You can trade it in for a newer model to have this one remade into something else, or donated to a country where coffee is more of a trade good than a delicacy that they can afford. I'm not saying that there aren't things that we can do individually that will create change. Honestly, there's a lot of little things that you can do that have been around since well before the Green Revolution. You can, for example, eat low on the food chain and be mindful of where your food comes from. Shop local. That way you're connected to the land, what's seasonally produced, and the community that supports it, the people that make your food. Also, you could prepare your own food and thereby reduce your consumption of food containers, these containers being one of the most common items in our landfill. Therefore, you're respecting the land and the community and what goes into your body. You could be active in your community and educate yourself on global issues. There's absolutely no point in democracy if half the population doesn't know what's going on, and a third of it doesn't vote anyways. Reduce, reuse, recycle, but most of all, respect. Remember that Earth stewardship includes care for all organisms on the planet, not just viable natural resources. Respect the land, respect the people, respect the rights of the unborn who inherit it. And that's all for today.